friend give way?
Do you mind if I will give way to my
Jonathan Edwards.
As well as the policing costs, my honourable friend will be aware that under the Riot Damages Act, responsibility for uninsured losses fall actually with police authorities. And in addition to that, even where insurance claims are made, the insurers who've paid are able to recover their loss from the police authorities. 2 days ago, it was estimated in this House that that figure's £330 million. Does that not add some force to the point my honourable friend made?
Gavin Barwell.
Well, my honourable friend has real expertise in this area, and he makes a very powerful point. We need reassurance on both of those issues. I will, if honourable members will allow me, make some progress, because I want to allow everybody that is here to speak in this debate. The estimate that the Metropolitan Police have provided us with is there are over 20,000 hours of CCTV in London alone to view. And I think that gives rise both to a lesson and to a question. The lesson is the importance of CCTV. There are, of course, legitimate civil liberty concerns. I don't think any member would want to see our country covered in surveillance cameras, but CCTV has played a crucial role in bringing people guilty of these offences to justice. I was much encouraged that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary on the 11th of August took a made more positive noises about the contribution than CCTV can make. I well understand why the government wants to make sure that when a system is introduced, the proper checks are made, but I would be very grateful to hear from the Minister that the government recognises the important contribution CCTV can make to both deterring crime and to catching people in these kinds of situations. The question I have to ask is the estimate that I have from my police is that it is going to take nearly 12 months to review the remaining evidence. And I think the government has to ask the question, is it reasonable to take that long? And if not, it seems to me the Met Police is going to need assistance from outside of London, not in the way it did in the immediate aftermath to patrol the streets, but actually to get through all of the evidence. I will for the last time, and then I will try and...
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way, and can I congratulate him on securing this debate. In Lewisham, the borough commander tells me that he has a team of 25 police officers currently reviewing some of that CCTV footage and investigating the riots that took place. Does the honourable gentleman share my concern about the potential impact upon other policing that may be going on in the borough, given the amount of resource that is dedicated to doing this?
The Honourable Lady makes a very good point. I think for a few weeks after the riots, I think the public understood the need to concentrate all resources on this operation, but clearly it would be very difficult for that to carry on for a whole year, and that would have a real impact on other areas of police work. The next issue I want to turn to is the crucial issue of intelligence. Now, I think Crime Stoppers has made a great contribution. The police themselves will tell you that they were receiving intelligence from people that would not normally provide it. But I've spent the 2 weeks before the Conservative Party conference visiting every school and sixth form college in my constituency to talk to young people about their attitudes to these issues. And actually on the vast suite of issues, they have very similar views to my middle-aged and more elderly constituents. But there is one issue where there is a difference, and that is their attitude towards the police. Young people of all backgrounds, but particularly young black men, do not have confidence that the police are there and on their side. Now, as someone in my late 30s, it seems to me that the police have moved on a long way from what the situation was when I was growing up. But it is clear that there remains a very significant problem. And the police have to ensure that they win the respect and trust of the people that they are policing. Because policing in this country is based on the principle of policing by consent. And at the moment, that consent is not there from crucial sections of the community that they need to police. I want to turn, if I may, to the public response. In Croydon, and I'm sure in many other areas of the country, there was a huge response in terms of cleaning up afterwards, people donating money to help rebuild the House of Reeves store and some of the other damaged properties. And I must have seen over 60 people in my surgery since the riots with ideas of projects they would like to get going to work with young people to try and stop this kind of thing happening again. And I think there is a question for government and local government about how we coordinate this upsurge of goodwill and make sure that some of these projects actually come to fruition. The second to last issue I want to touch on is bringing those responsible to justice. First of all, I want to praise the courts for the speed of their response. I think there were members of staff working in the court service who may well be made redundant over coming months as a result of the savings that have been made, that went above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that the courts processed these cases quickly. And I think there has to be a question to the Ministry of Justice of can we actually maintain this kind of swifter process of justice so that people that have committed violent crimes are actually taken to court sooner rather than the long delays that we often see going forward. The Ministry of Justice Research tells us that those who committed offences during the riots were more likely to receive an immediate custodial sentence and to receive a longer sentence than if they committed the same offence a month earlier. And I spent much of the summer defending that sentencing approach from various eminent lawyers on TV and on the radio, because I think it has done a lot to restore faith in our criminal justice system. I want to quote from His Honour Judge Andrew Gilbert QC, who was sentencing some defendants at Manchester Crown Court. He said, "The people of Manchester and Salford are entitled to look to the law for protection and to the courts to punish those who have behaved so outrageously. It would be wholly unreal, therefore, for me to have regard only to the specific acts which you committed as if they had been committed in isolation. Those acts were not committed in isolation, and as I've already indicated, is a fact which substantially aggravates the gravity of this offence." I could just finish the quote, if I may. "The court has to pay regard to the level and nature of the criminal conduct that night, to its scale, the extent to which it was premeditated, the number of persons engaged, and finally, the specific acts of the individual defendant. For the purposes of these sentences, I have no doubt at all that the principal purpose is that the court should show that outbursts of criminal behaviour like this will be and must be met with sentences longer than they would be if the offences had been committed in isolation."
Field.
Honourable friend for giving way. Would he accept my view that I would entirely agree with those sentiments, but that sentencing should and must remain an issue for an independent judiciary, whether the courts or magistrates? And I think the bigger concern was that some of these exemplary sentences were those that were being egged on either by the political class or indeed by the press in the immediate aftermath of that, and it would be a quite retrograde step for justice to be meted out in that way and not be left very firmly in the hands of those who are experienced in sentencing matters.
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend that decisions on individual sentences must be for judges and for individual magistrates. I think it is reasonable for us as members of Parliament to reflect in generality the views of our constituents, but the individual decisions must remain with judges and with magistrates. I want to just comment on some figures that I've received from my borough commander about the impact on crime of the approach that sentencing has resulted in. If you compare Croydon from the period of the 17th of July to the 14th of August, so including the day when the riots took place, and compare that with the period from the 15th of August to the 11th of September, property crime is well down, as you would expect. There were a huge number of property offences committed on the 8th of August. But violent crime is down by over 20%. And that seems to show to me very clearly that we are offered a false choice when it comes to crime and punishment, between those who argue that what is required is tough punishment, that prison works, and those who say that in terms of rehabilitation, it doesn't work, people come out and reoffend. And actually, it seems to me, both of those things are true. It is both true that removing dangerous, violent people from the streets gives a break to the law-abiding and leads to a reduction in crime, and that we must reform our prisons so that they do a more effective job of rehabilitating people and changing people's pattern of behaviour. Finally, I want to turn, Mr Weir, to some of the underlying issues, and this comes back to the question that my honourable friend from Gloucester asked me. I think it is important that politicians on both sides of this House reflect on some of the long-held views they have. When I listened to the statement and the debate on the 11th of August, there were some who were arguing this was purely a matter of criminality, of a moral failing, and others arguing that this was all about inequality and unfairness in society. And it seems to me that both of those things, again, have some merit. There are clearly issues about parenting, about a lack of fathers, and I think there is a real role, certainly as a man, I think there is a real role for making the case for the responsibility that men have if they are there when a child is conceived for the rest of that child's life. We clearly have to be, I just need to make a little bit more progress because I'm very conscious of the time. We clearly need to be careful against generalising. Several of my friends were brought up by single mums who did a great job, so we mustn't demonise any class of parents, but there is an issue about lack of fathers, and there is definitely an issue about people witnessing and experiencing violence at home. The Wave Trust report in 2005 pointed that very strongly. There is a great community group in Croydon called Lives Not Knives that works with ex-gang offenders, and I sat at a seminar they did about a month before the riots and listened to 4 ex-gang members, all of whom had either personally experienced or witnessed traumatic violence at a young age, and there is a clear link between that and violent conduct later in life. So I welcome what the government is doing in terms of addressing problem families and the issue of community budgeting. I think there is more that could be done about promoting fostering and adoption so we can get some young people out of our care system. Clearly, we need to address issues around educational disadvantage, around exclusion and truancy. And I want to end, Mr Weir, by just mentioning 3 other issues where I don't have a solution to put forward, but I think clearly are relevant to this debate. First is the issue of youth unemployment. I got some figures from the House of Commons Library that show the trend in general unemployment versus youth unemployment over a long period of time. Over the last 20 years, governments of all different political complexions. In 1992, youth unemployment was 2/3 higher than general unemployment. By 1997, it was double general unemployment. By 2001, it was 140% of the general unemployment rate, and in 2005, it was 165% of the general unemployment rate. So we have to address ourselves to what are the things that are leading it to making young people much harder to find work in our society relative to the general population. I think we also have to address the sort of culture of materialism in our society, which I think is one of the factors behind the behaviour we saw. And it's very clear to me, looking at the situation in Croydon, that there is an inextricable link between gang culture and the drugs trade, and addressing the issue of how we deal with illegal drug use in our country. I don't pretend to have answers to all of these questions, Mr. Weir, but it does seem to me that looking at the evidence that is emerging about what happened across the country in early August has very clear lessons in a number of regards for public policy, and I very much look forward to hearing the contributions of other members of this House.
Order. There's a very large number of members wishing to speak in this debate, so I would encourage brevity. Nick Rainsford.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to speak on a subject which has rightly attracted a great deal of attention and comment, and I congratulate the honourable member for Croydon Central on securing the debate and for his speech, which demonstrated a thoughtful, serious and insightful analysis, almost all of which I agree with.